There was once a girl whose dreams stretched as far as the ocean. Someone whose smile could illuminate the darkest of spaces. She was young. Someone who was living in the carefree years, where everything seemed so magical. But who could have known that beyond the magic, something sinister was lurking? An unseen event that would claim not only her life, but the peace of mind for those around her. But sadly, her case has faded into memory, swept under the rug, foreshadowed by the many cases that followed thereafter. But I'm here to remind you that she existed, and although you didn't know her personally, for the people who did, she'll never be forgotten. And after hearing this case, you won't forget her name either. This is the story of Maya Lyons, a tale of tragic heartbreak. November 26, 1998. The world would make way for Maya Lyons. She would be born to her mother, Erica Barnes, and her father, Richard Lyons. Somewhere down the road, the relationship between her parents wouldn't work out, and they would split, but they would maintain a healthy relationship for their daughter's sake. By the year of 2008, Maya would be 9 years old. She was described as a girly girl, someone who was sweet and funny, an avid lover of the color of pink, and she also enjoyed spending time with her siblings. By this time, she was predominantly raised by her mother, where they shared a home in Addison, Illinois. Although she spent most of her time at her mother's residence, she also visited her father. Erica and Richard had come to the agreement that she would spend every other weekend with her father, while the remainder would be spent with her mother. But during the summertime, things would change. Maya would tend to stay just a little bit longer. With no school and the summertime at her disposal, she enjoyed staying with her father. She would often stay 1 or even 2 weeks at a time. Maya had just completed the 3rd grade and was looking forward to going to the 4th. When staying with her father, she would be just a short drive away. Her father stayed in the greater Chicago area, which is roughly a 32-minute drive from Addison, Illinois. In mid-July of 2008, Maya would be visiting her father, but this time, the visit wouldn't go as planned. Minutes after midnight on July 15th of 2008, 9-year-old Maya Lyons would be discovered inside of a dark alley. The person who found her? Her father, Richard. And at the time, Maya was unresponsive. Richard details that after discovering his daughter, he places her inside of a van and then he rushes her to a local hospital. Upon arrival, medical personnel notices the presence of blood, not the kind that comes from a minor injury, but rather something that was devastating. The hospital would inquire with Richard about what exactly happened, but he said he wasn't sure because he wasn't there. He would, however, offer a theory. He said that the alley behind his home was often frequented by stray dogs, and if he had to take a guess, she was probably attacked by one of those. Little Maya Lyons would be rushed to the emergency room, but sadly, she wouldn't survive her injuries. Shortly after arrival, she would be pronounced deceased. But there was also one more problem. While attempting to save her life, they would quickly realize that these injuries didn't come from a dog. Working in an emergency room, they've seen their fair share of injuries, and when they looked at Maya's, they quickly determined that her injuries sustained came from a steel blade. In other words, a knife. And just like that, an investigation would begin. They would start at the home of Maya and work their way to the dark alley. Roughly 100 yards away from Maya's home, they would discover a puddle of red substance. Due to the area being overgrown with weeds and covered in debris, it was a hard find. The officers would photograph the dark alley, and they would also take things into evidence. On the scene, they would find a pair of pink claws. They would also find hair barrettes, and last but not least, they would swab that red substance, which would test positive for blood. After photographing the scene and taking anything into evidence, the next thing to do is find out what happened. So they would start with her father, Richard. They would haul him down to headquarters for further questioning. While being questioned, Richard would be asked to walk the officers through his day, so he would explain. July 14th of 2008 was normal. He got up and he prepared himself for work. After completing his work, he would return home at about 6:15 p.m. Upon arrival, he notices that Maya is outside playing with her brother. By 7:30 p.m., Maya and her brother had returned home. That way they could eat dinner. They would all sit down and enjoy a meal. Richard would then explain that at about 9 p.m., Maya and her brother left. They were leaving to visit a neighbor's home where they both shared friends. Maya's brother's name was Fudge, and this was nothing new. They would often walk up the street to visit those friends. At the time, Fudge is 13 years old, and with a neighbor not being far away, they were trusted to walk in the middle of the night to the home. Richard says that shortly after they left, he fell asleep. He says he didn't sleep long. He would wake up at roughly 11 p.m., and when he did, he could hear both Maya and her brother playing and talking downstairs. Richard says that 15 minutes later, he walks downstairs, and when he does, he doesn't see Maya. He would immediately go and check Maya's room, but it's empty. He then goes to his son's room, Fudge, and he asks about Maya's whereabouts, but his son doesn't know either. Richard would then canvass the immediate area, knocking door to door, first at Maya's known spots, and then complete strangers. But after knocking door to door, no one had seen her, which leads us back to minutes after midnight on July 15th of 2008. Richard explains that he finds her laying down inside of this dark alley. But beyond that, Richard knows nothing. No one that would want to harm Maya, and no one that was capable of it. In the early morning hours of July 15th of 2008, Erica Barnes would be notified about her daughter's passing. She too would be questioned by the authorities, but everything seemed so far-fetched. Maya's mother would explain that she was a good child, someone who never ran away from home, someone who never left the home without permission. There was also one more thing. Maya Lyons was scared of the dark. In fact, she slept with a nightlight, so the thought of Maya leaving her home late night without permission and walking into a dark alley just seemed odd, which could only leave one scenario. Somewhere out there was someone who was bold enough to walk into the home of Richard, take Maya, and then afterwards take her life into his hands. Days would pass, and the authorities had no leads and no suspects, at least no one official. And then they would receive another big lead. Roughly 3 days after the investigation began, someone would discover a knife inside of the alley. Days later, they would have a suspect. The person in question was an adult male with a shady past, someone who frequented those alleyways, collecting scrap metal. Turns out, he was seen in that area that Maya was found shortly before she was discovered, and he even admitted to the authorities that yes, he was there that night, but he doesn't know what happened. It wouldn't take long to rule that lead out. It turns out he had an airtight alibi. He was there that night, but by the time that whatever happened to Maya happened, he had moved on to a different area. This would place the detectives back at square one. This means recanvassing the area and re-interviewing witnesses. They would circle around once again and re-interview Richard Lyons, but this time he explains that the interview went different. He says that instead of being treated like a victim, he was being questioned as a suspect. Realizing that he might be on their radar, he lawyers up, and after that, he refuses to talk to them. By July 26 of 2008, authorities would be armed with 2 separate warrants. One warrant to search Richard's home, and a second warrant to search his van. The search of the home would turn up nothing, and when they searched the van, they were quiet about it. They simply took it into evidence and never released it. In the coming days and weeks, no arrests were made. There were no new leads or no new suspects that were announced. The city of Chicago was now on full alert. Everyone wanted to know what happened to 9-year-old Maya Lyons. And with that person walking free, they felt no one was safe.
Well, Aaron, still no suspects, but police were back out here today canvassing this neighborhood and talking to residents. Now, we've also learned that they've taken DNA samples from several people in this neighborhood, including all the males in Maya's father's home. City crews were busy trimming and raking clearing the area from overgrown trees, brush, and weeds. Maya's family members and others in the 8400 block of South Gilbert Court said they had been asking for this cleanup for some time, but it took a murder for it to finally happen.
We all complained about the weeds, the wild trees and stuff that was growing out there, but it's like no one never came out to cut nothing down.
I wish that the trees had not been there, because perhaps it would have alleviated what happened.
Meantime, police continue to search for Maya's killer. Family members say the little girl went to bed about 11 o'clock Monday night. Minutes later, they say they heard a door shut, and about 15 minutes later, Maya's father says he found her in the alley. She later died at the hospital. Her family says they have no idea how she got in that alley.
She was afraid of the alley. She never ran around in the alley.
Maya lived with her mom in Addison, but she was spending part of her summer with her dad. There's now a memorial of balloons and teddy bears near the crime scene. Maya's father says his little girl is gone, but he's thankful for the 9 years that he got to share with her.
Those 9 years, no matter what happens in the future, those past 9 years can't be taken away.
And Aaron, a $5,500 reward is being offered for information leading to an arrest of Maya's killer. Her funeral will be held Saturday at 11 o'clock at the Monument of Faith Evangelistic Church. Reporting from the Auburn Gresham neighborhood, Regina Waldrop, CLTV News. Aaron.
Before you know it, 2 years would pass in the investigation, and there was still no arrest made. The city of Chicago quickly realized that the case was cold, at least in their eyes. And with no one in custody, they would continue to fight for justice. One guy at the forefront of this fight was Siren Smith, a guy who, when he wasn't busy with his job, was a community activist. In all, Siren Smith has helped tackle crime in over 167 neighborhoods. And with the case of Maya Lyons, it was no different. He would take to the streets with his camera and not only record the community's reactions, but sound the alarm for justice.
Straight up to the camera, though. It's crazy. So they still ain't. We hope with somebody, you know what I'm saying, who knows something, confess up, say something.
They finding all these people out selling drugs and all this, locking them up. They ain't found this killer of a little girl.
So they gonna go knock on door to door, see if anybody knows something. Get their point across, you know what I'm saying, let them know, see if they trying to help.
They need to find whoever did this, man. It's way past time. It's way overdue. It's way overdue.
We winter time. Huh?
Hell yeah, this happened in the summer. All they did over here was cut down trees, put up some damn fences.
No cameras or nothing.
Nothing.
Erica, just introduce yourself real quick. I know who you are. But just
Erica, Maya Lyons' mother.
And everybody, especially our YouTube audience, what we're out here doing, the bottom line is we had to find out who killed Maya Lyons. Maya was 8 years old. 9 years old. Her birthday is coming up on the 26th of this month, and we don't know who killed Maya Lyons yet. Totally unacceptable. We right here. It's Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon. We on the block, a few feet from where it occurred at, and everyone out here is angry and ready to find out who the heck did it. That's the bottom line. Just speak. This is a commercial to invite everybody out there that's listening to join us, because you will not rest until we find it. Just speak real quick.
Just so that everybody out there know, as Maya's mother, I will not rest until they find who did this to my baby.
That's right.
They did it in a vicious and a brutal way, cowardly way, and I'm not going to rest until I find who did this.
That's it.
And we just need to come together as a community.
This whole block should say unacceptable. I'm glad.
Help out with this, you know, because it's something that needs to be done. Because if they did it once, they're going to do it again.
With pressure building, the authorities would finally make an arrest. But when they took the person in custody, it wasn't who everyone was thinking. They expected to see a boogeyman, but instead, it would be Richard Lyons who was arrested, the father of Maya. It turns out that when they initially searched his van, they did find the presence of blood. But due to Richard admitting that he transported his daughter inside of the van to the hospital, it wasn't enough evidence. So they would spend the next 2 years building circumstantial evidence. They started with the facts. One fact on that night is that Richard never called the police, nor the paramedics. He says he simply found his daughter and transported her to the hospital. But the authorities saw the hospital that he took her to as odd because it didn't seem like he was in a rush. He didn't take her to the nearest hospital. He drove further away. There was also that story about Maya being attacked by dogs, which just seemed odd. If you didn't know what happened, then why provide that theory? But the most critical evidence was the blood, or rather, the spot it was found. It was found inside of the window shade located in the van, but also inside of an air vent. A spatter expert would say that the only way that it would land in those locations is if it occurred inside of the van and not from being transported. Richard Lyons would be arrested and charged with murder, and he would have his day in court. When he showed up, 42-year-old Richard Lyons would plead not guilty and say the prosecution has it wrong. He's an innocent man. The prosecution would lay out their theory of what happened to Maya Lyons on that night, and when they closed, it was time for the defense to present their case, to show the world how the man that is standing accused was innocent of the crime and how the state got it wrong.
We want to, again, try to shine some light back on this investigation. We want to say that we too are concerned that everybody lost here. We want for justice to be served and for the person who did this to be caught.
That Richard Lyons was a grieving father that somehow came into the crosshairs of an investigation. But none of that happened. In fact, the defense team decided not to present a case at all. So at that point, the jury only knew what the prosecution team believed. Their theory is that on the night that Richard Lyons said he went out to look for Maya, he found her behind the home. They believe that when he found Maya, he was enraged because she was outside where she wasn't supposed to be. He then snapped. During the autopsy, it would reveal that Maya had sustained an injury to her head. This injury would cause multiple fractures. In fact, her COD would be ruled as blunt force trauma.
Hello everyone, Cyron Smith, your host again. I'm in the alley of 84th and Gilbert Court. This is the block Maya Lyons was found murdered, coming up on 2 years, July 14th. Just wanted to take you guys through this alley. That's my car sitting there, but it's spooky. Just knowing what happened to her and knowing that the killer or killers and the people who know what happened to her still out here.
Located behind their home was a key lockbox, similar to a realtor box. The lockbox in question was attached to a post. They believed that he pushed her a little bit too hard and she hit her head on that. Maya would immediately collapse and go unconscious. And when this happened, they believe Richard began to panic. He picks up Maya and puts her inside of his van. At some point during this time, he grabs a weapon. It isn't clear whether he retrieved this item from the home or whether it was already inside of the van. He then begins to swing the knife. The authorities believe that this was an attempt to make it look like some crazed lunatic had did this to Maya. In other words, he was staging a scene. After he was done, he took Maya out of the van, placed her in the darkest, coldest part of the alley.
But I'm walking to the site where they found little Maya, and we still got something up here. The killer's still out here.
He then removed her pink shoes, as well as her hair barrettes, and placed them around the scene. When he was done, he returned home, changed his clothes.
It's hard to imagine that the person that did this could have went back home clean, that they could have gotten back in their house without somebody seeing something.
He then began knocking door to door, inquiring about Maya's whereabouts when he already knew where she was. And in a last attempt to save face, he would pretend to find her. He returned to the dark alley, placed Maya inside of the van, and then took her to the hospital. In all, Maya Lyons had 30 entrance and exit wounds.
So please, if you know anything, let that information out. Let that information be known.
Little Maya Lyons' hands were also in bad shape, which means she fought back with everything she had. Some reports even say that there was evidence that she was violated. Whether or not that happened was never definitively answered, but one thing was, at the same time that Richard was taken into custody for the murder of his daughter, he was also facing a separate charge, a charge for violating a boy in a completely different case. But that's another story. When the prosecution team made their closing arguments, the jury would file out of court for deliberations, and they would take only 2 hours to find Richard Lyons guilty of murder.
If you're the person that's watching, know that we are coming for you, and you will be caught.
For his role in this incident, Richard would be handed down a sentence of 60 years. But although justice was served, there's still an elephant in the room. What truly happened to 9-year-old Maya Lyons? I guess that outside of the prosecution's theory, we'll never know, because Richard Lyons still says he's innocent and that he didn't do this. In fact, he submitted an appeal. Because of Maya Lyons, the women of Chicago now hug their children just a little bit tighter, and her story is a constant reminder of what could happen. Rest in peace, Maya Lyons. Thank you for being a light for others. I truly hope your story is fully told one day.